So we can now get into the last section. We might finish this book today. Oh no, this is a foul language chat or group. Foul language is totally welcome. We're talking about heavy shit. But yeah, this is the last section, so we might finish the book today. Yay! I'm very excited. But yeah, so here we go. Thank y'all so much for being here. All right, transforming carceral logics. This is this chapter is like so important. So this is 10 reasons to dismantle the prison industrial complex through queer trans analysis and action. So the struggles for gender and sexual justice and the growing crisis of mass incarceration, over policing, and centuries of control are too often considered isolated from each other when they are in fact not. Prisoner justice activists and LGBTQ organizations often overlook the plight of queer prisoners. LGBTQ organizations often are quick to present hate crime laws and longer prison sentences as a solution, which harms queer prisoners. But struggles against abuse, assault, poverty, and racism require clearer connections between the violence of gender and sexual oppression and the violence of the prison system. Many of those doing work in communities can clearly see the connection between oppression and the prison industrial complex. Let's see, Too Sleepy, Too Ginger. I read once that when I was a kid that laughing can counteract pain, so ever since it has became a pain for talking about real dark shit. Yeah, 100%. It's like that uncomfortable laughing. That's definitely my response. When I'm uncomfortable, I'm like just panic laughing, and it's oftentimes the worst thing. But yeah. Oh, I love those little hearts. Okay, so let's go through these 10 reasons. All right, 1. Queer, trans, and gender nonconforming people have been historically subject to oppressive laws, gender policing, and criminal punishment, a legacy that continues today despite ongoing legal reforms. While many overtly homophobic and transphobic laws have very recently been overturned, criminalization and punishment of queer and trans people extend beyond formal legislation. State officials ignore everyday violence against queer people, selectively enforce laws in transphobic and homophobic ways, meaning that if they know that you are trans or queer, they will give you longer sentences. They over-police and give harsher sentences to trans people, and engage in physical acts of violence against queer people regularly. I love that like little triangle emote. I also have to make a emote soon. I am working on it. I don't know how to do it, but I am working on it, and I hope to have them for you like within maybe 2 weeks. But yes, next, number 2, queer, trans, and gender nonconforming people. I put gender non-coming people. I can't. Sorry for all the typos. I make so many typos. I don't I don't know what to tell you. I run this shit through like correct multiple like Grammarly, all the kind of shit, and I still fuck up so much. Let me know about that afternoon tune. Let me know about your emote plug. But yes, queer, trans, and gender nonconforming people, particularly those from low-income backgrounds and communities of color, are directly targeted by criminalization, punishment, and imprisonment. The school-to-prison pipeline disproportionately affects queer and trans youth because queer and trans youth are over-policed by schools and faculty. And depending on the school, even presenting as your gender will get you in trouble. And the more you get in trouble, if those stack up, you can end up going to detention. And then once you go to detention, you're seen as a troublemaker. If you're late, there's all kinds of ways that they can quickly put you in a juvenile facility. And once you're in a juvenile facility and you are queer, it's very hard to get out because many juvenile correctional facilities, you don't have a set release date. They usually will release you when they think that you are reformed or when you have completed your reforming process or track that they give you. And if you continue to present as your gender or continue to be queer, they often will not let you out. We talked about that another day, but just to kind of re-bring that Yeah, emote plug. Hey, you got any of that emote? Yeah, 100%. 3, prisons reinforce oppressive gender and sexual norms. 4, prisons are violent and damaging places, especially for queer, trans, and gender nonconforming folks. Prisons are violent institutions. Prisoners themselves are not inherently violent, and most prisoners are, in fact, nonviolent offenders. The correctional officers and staff are often the aggressors and create an environment of abuse and neglect. Specific harms that queer and trans people are subject to are high risk of assault and abuse, denial of healthcare, solitary confinement, and constant strip searching, which and all of this abuse can often lead to higher rates of self-harm and suicide. 5, ending violence against queer, trans, and gender nonconforming people requires a focus on the prison industrial complex. Prisons perpetuate rather than break cycles of harm. People are less likely to cause harm to others when they feel like they are a part of a community because social inclusion brings responsibilities. By separating people from their communities, prisons isolate people and disconnect them from any frameworks of accountability. The idea that sending people to prison is a way to achieve justice is propaganda. Prisons exist to jail people that are a threat to white supremacy and capitalism. They benefit the bourgeois by allowing them to maintain control and increase their capital. 6, prisons reinforce dominant relations of power, especially racism, classism, ableism, and colonial oppression. The modern prison grew out of the European colonial project of slavery. The history of medical experimentation, forced psychiatric treatment, forced sterilization, and eugenics continue to shape the contemporary prison system. They found, I think, like 2 years ago, that California prisons were sterilizing women without their consent. Whether we consider who is targeted by prisons or the socioeconomic power relations that sustain imprisonment, the prison industrial complex is fundamentally racist, classist, and ableist. They try to tell you that some people are more criminal, but the reality is that some people are more criminalized. 7, prisons and, oh, I gotta click the slide. 7, prisons and policing take vital resources away from much needed community programs, services, and self-empowerment. So as you can see here, look at how much money we spend on police. It is so much, so many. And then you can see here, I live in LA, that policing is 50% of the budget. You can see how much we give to the library, to parks, to fire. We have a huge crisis of people being unhoused in LA. And giving money directly to building affordable housing isn't even big enough to where you can see it as a slice on the pie. Even though I feel like most people in LA will tell you that that is one of the biggest issues, is affordable housing. This is just so fucked up. Like, damn, these funds could fundamentally change these neighborhoods for the better, 100%. All right, so we have 8. Prison, blah, blah, blah. Red leather, yellow leather. Number 8, prison growth is reaching a global crisis, and LGBTQ people are becoming increasingly complicit in its expansion. Neoliberal gay rights groups push for hate crime laws and prisons just made for queer people, which does not make queer people any more safer. It just makes it easier to expand the prison industrial complex. And hate crime laws are really difficult to enforce. They're very vague, and often those that actually do commit hate crimes are not even usually punished for them. But we talked about that in a previous chapter. 9, prisons and police do not make queer, trans, and gender nonconforming communities any safer. Who's like, yes, cops, that makes me feel safe. Poverty begets crime. They don't want to end crime. They want to capitalize from it 100%. They find ways to criminalize poor people. They also find ways to keep trans people, to keep Black people out of the traditional economy. So they end up, you do things like survival crimes. Because I mean, if you cannot find a job that will give you enough money to feed your family, but doing something that is illegal will feed your family, what are you gonna do? Starve? That is not a choice. Um, that is the plot of Les Miserables. But yes. And number 10, finally, disabled people too. You're absolutely right. Thank you. Number 10, alternatives to prison will better prevent violence, strengthen queer and trans communities, and foster social, economic, and racial justice. Prison abolition is not a call to free every single person at this exact moment or an appeal to a utopian ideal. It is a broad-based, practical vision for building models today that practice how we want to live in the future. There's tons of abolitionist strategies, like one, starving the system, depriving it of financial resources. That's where you get defund the police. Because if you're defunding the police, it better be because you're on your way to abolish the police. Starve the system. A moratorium on prison expansion. You want to make sure that we are not building any more prisons, and decriminalizing and not passing any more laws that criminalize people. And you want to stop using cages, both physical and metaphorical. Kill the cop in your head. Develop effective alternatives, like developing community protocols for addressing violence and harm that are non-punitive, like restorative justice. And poverty is a driver of crime. If you do not want crime, then eliminate poverty. Communism. And by practicing abolition every day in the interactions you have, and to overall be less punitive. Yes. And then, yes, this is, you can see prison populations of developing countries, and you can see how many people are imprisoned in the United States, but also other countries in the imperialist core are mimicking the United States policing systems, and you are seeing way more police being built in places like Canada, and even in Europe. And you're seeing the worldwide prison population going up exponentially every year. Let's see, Thelonious, what's poppin'? The LGBTQ communities are put at way more risk from police and kidnapped people, period. We're 100% right. Oh, I just read this. Should have clicked. All right, so the next chapter, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Miss Major, but she's amazing. So this chapter is an interview with Miss Major herself, a Black, formerly incarcerated trans elder and veteran activist born and raised on the South Side of Chicago. She is a prominent abolitionist and an organizer in the LGBTQ community. She was at the Stonewall Rebellion and was the executive director of the Trans, Gender Variant, and Intersex Justice Project. The TGIJP help incarcerated or formerly incarcerated people maintain their civil rights and help them fight for their freedom. They have a legal team, a fundraising team, a mentorship program, and a pen pal project. So this chapter is really cool. I would definitely recommend reading it if you want to know more about how to organize for prison abolition. Also, Miss Major is amazing. I definitely, if you've never heard of her before, I recommend watching her interviews, hearing her speak. She is so knowledgeable and just a beacon of light. And these are some photos of her that brought me joy. Yes. Okay, so here are some nuggets of wisdom from this chapter. So the largest prison expansion bill, AB 900, is being implemented in California, and is increasing policing through gang injunctions and collaboration between local police, the federal government, and ICE. Mainstream media urges us to become more dependent on state-sponsored knowledge that we already have to create, and this sentence makes no sense. I should have proofread this, but I was in a hurry. But yeah, we are very reliant on mainstream media, which has a lot of propaganda, when we have so many ways where we can create and support self-determined communities and build communities ourselves. And history tells us that trans women, especially trans women of color, have always been at the forefront of the fight for liberation. And Miss Major Griffin Gracie is one of those women. And there she is. Communities like this one, 100%. Building a little community here. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, and that is one of the points of mutual aid, is to get to know the people around you and to build community, and from there you can start fostering self-determined communities. Yes, trans flag emote. That brings joy. All right. And this next chapter is Gender Wars, state changing shape, passing to play in the body of our movements. So the author of this chapter is a lawyer describing the prison expansion laws that they have fought against and their experience being a abolitionist. So this first part talks about California's proposal for a near 40% expansion of their women's prison system by opening a new system of mini prisons called Female Rehabilitative Community Correction Centers, FRCCCs, throughout the Central Valley and beyond. These were and are a part of a coordinated, growing movement to push prison expansion in a new form called gender responsiveness, which is some neoliberal shit. Gender responsiveness is a policy pushed by white, cisgender, liberal feminists speaking on what is good for women. Thank you for the follow. Gender responsiveness puts a feminist face on tough on crime policies that have been exploitative and policing, that have pushed exploitative policing that has plagued BIPOC for centuries. Thank you for the follow. A lot of money is spent on giving correctional officers gender responsiveness training, which uses sexist stereotypes to differentiate between male and female inmates. One of the examples is women commit crimes because they are victims, whereas men commit crimes because they are like bad and mean and aggressive. All right, and we have first writing sense. And then before we get into it, this slide and the next one have some amazing posters made by Cass. I'm sure if you're on Twitter, you've seen Cass, but let me just pop their Twitter in the chat real quick because she let me use her work and I really appreciate it. And I think she does some really amazing work. But yes, so we have, why is my computer being wild? So yes, this graphic on this one and the next one were made by Cass. You should check her out on Twitter. I just put it in the chat. All right, and now on to the next chapter. Oh, I forgot I already went to the slide. I just like skipped after plugging Cass. Anyways, so first writing sense. While they wrote this essay and continued to fight for prison abolition, their partners and comrades were targeted, harassed, beaten, and imprisoned with very high bail, and some were even charged with terrorism. This experience reinforced the idea that the personal is political and reminded them how much our movements are unfortunately heavily influenced by the violence of the state, because we are constantly trying to protect ourselves and our loved ones while simultaneously trying to dismantle the state. But they were also inspired by all the ways we have adapted and bettered our organizing skills. And once again, I thought this one was really cool to talk about all the ways that we have adapted and bettered our organizing skills. It shows all the things that we work on in terms of mutual aid and stuff that will make the revolution possible by building up our communities and making ourselves autonomous and powerful on our own. But yes, so glimpses of the fire. Justice Now activists, they did defeat gender responsive prison construction, but they still remember the trauma of this fight. And prison expansion bills and laws continue to be written and many pass. We cannot get stuck on the treadmill of reform where we continue to try to fight against these bills. Because basically, when fucked up bills are defeated, the bourgeois fund the rewriting of the bill and they will try again. When reforms are passed, they often have loopholes that render them insufficient and are eventually pushed back. This is why we must organize and build dual power with the goal of abolition, not just of prisons, but of every white supremacist capitalist police state. You can't reform this shit. It can only be dismantled. And only communism will win. Yeah. But yeah, this graphic is also amazing, and it is made by Cass. And you should check her out on Twitter. I put it in the chat. Maroon abolitionists. Black gender oppressed activists in the anti-prison movement in the US and Canada. Abolish it all for real. You get me, Kid 702. You get me. Since the 1970s, the growth of incarceration combined with the targeted criminalization and surveillance of Black people makes the prison system the center of economic and racial justice. Anyone that says they support BLM or Black liberation without centering abolition is performative and reactionary. You cannot improve the material conditions of Black people in any meaningful and lasting way without abolishing the police and the prison industrial complex. The U.S.-style punitive policies have been spreading across the globe. There are differences in the scale and practices of the United States and Canadian legal system. The U.S. has a tough on crime policy and have been exponentially expanding prisons and policing, while reform has limited but not stopped prison expansion in Canada. Abolitionists in the U.S. and Canada have diverse goals, like, for example, ending the war on drugs, decriminalizing sex work, and ending the war on terror. This chapter is based on a series of interviews with 8 Black abolitionists from the United States and Canada. And they are women and gender nonconforming folks and vary in class, sexuality, and history with imprisonment. Yes, period. Bloop. I love that. Okay. So, love and anger, reasons for resistance. The 1960s and 70s were marked by movements against oppression. And the 1990s and early 2000s had anti-war and anti-prison movements. The abolition movement has attracted people of all backgrounds because abolitionists have made clear how prison negatively impacts everybody. It is imperative all movements center those that are directly impacted, specifically those that have been imprisoned, those that have had family imprisoned, and those that have experienced heavy policing and surveillance. So you can see here how much the prison population has went up since basically 1976. And the 60s and 70s were a time when people were beginning to really coordinate and fight against capitalistic oppression, fight against white supremacist oppression, and then all of a sudden you have this huge uptick in targeted harassment and policing. Yes, 100%. That is, well, I agree. The most marginalized and poorest people and genders should lead the movement, period. Those that live in intersections of oppression, like if you are poor and Black and queer, you understand so much more. You understand the way that oppression works, and you very likely have a deep understanding of how you would like to end it and how you would like to change things. That is so true. Thank you for bringing that up, Thelonious. That was also the end of sharecropping. which was the end of, that was, they're like, how am I going to get super cheap labor? Oh, I can put that 13th Amendment in that little loophole. Yes. All right, and then this is a quote from this chapter that says, "What makes me the most angry is that everybody's sitting there kicking it, not knowing that they're building plantations." Talking about prisons. So Maroon abolitionism, visions of freedom. Black abolitionist scholars have begun to show the connection between policing, imprisonment, and slavery. By adopting the term abolition, abolitionists are connecting the prison system to slavery. The word maroon refers to communities of runaway slaves, indigenous people, and their descendants. And maroon also avoids implying that society outside of prison is free. One limitation of the slavery prison narrative is it can erase non-Black prisoners, especially in Canada, where First Nation prisoners suffer the most dramatic rates of incarceration. But Maroon communities often welcome Indigenous people and exiled anti-racist white folks. So Maroon provides an opportunity for Black and Brown coalition. The United States and Canada began expanding the prison industrial complex to target Black liberation, Native Americans, and the Puerto Rican independence movement, and the First Nations around the 60s and 70s, showing that the prison industrial complex is a tool for maintaining control, not for justice or safety. Prisons are a modern-day plantation. The prison industrial complex targets Black folks, abuses them, and forces them to do unpaid or poorly paid labor. The police terrorize communities of poor Black people. Prisons are integral to perpetuating capitalistic exploitation. They not only imprison Black people to exploit their labor, but the war on drug targets Black people that are making money without the bourgeois taking most of it. Black people are often systemically prevented from generational wealth, and drug dealing is a high-paying job, free from bourgeois exploitation. This state has waged a war on its citizens, declaring wars on drugs, gangs, terror, and crime with a focus on terrorizing low-income communities of color. Maroon abolitionists know that if we fail to achieve abolition, they themselves, their family members, and their loved ones will continue to be disappeared. So as abolitionists, we must understand that this is a pressing fight, and we must be working every day to build up our communities and take down the prison industrial complex and all oppressive systems and states. All right. Transforming anti-prison work beyond the gender binary. The state uses its power to police gender presentation by denying medical care and mandating people wear gender-appropriate clothing in prisons as well as schools and at work. By imprisoning people by their genitalia, prisons violate prisoners' ability to self-determine. Trans people are more vulnerable to physical and sexual assault, and gendered violence is not a flaw in the prison system, but a key aspect of it. Ooh, what's up? Too Sleepy Too Ginger. Oh Lord, it's come out here in Ontario. One of our main inpatient autistic and mental health services, because of terrible exclusionary contracts, has been used for years to test drugs and therapies on people in foster care, mainly Indigenous children. Fuck, I'm not surprised by that, but that is so fucked up. Yes, so we have a breakdown here. A 2015 survey of trans men and women showed basically how awful prisons are. And yeah. Next. Invoking the ancestors, spiritual undercurrents in anti-prison work. So Black non-men have to deal with the trauma and stress of the prison industrial complex while also dealing with misogynoir and transphobia. Prisons in the US and Canada are often sites of evangelical interventions with Indigenous folks and Muslims are being targeted. The spiritual belief of Black prisoners often helps them connect to their humanity and their ancestors, many reconnecting with the religious practices of their ancestors. And I thought this was really, really beautiful. It happens in the US too to indigenous and African and Black folk. 100%. We end up the guinea pigs for some dangerous shit. 100%. Yeah. I mean, you can see how the US treated Puerto Rican women. You can see how the US treats women in ICE detention centers and all folks. And how they are just treated awful and used. Their bodies are often used for experiments without their consent. We have a huge issue with forced sterilization in this country as well. Um, they agreed on a settlement out of court while still trying to deny wrongdoing, but honestly, not nearly enough for their damage. Oh, it's never nearly enough for their damage. People like to act like the Tuskegee experiments were one-off. No, that is the way the shit works. They're very much not. No kidding. Just look at the history of gynecology. 100%. I want to do a book on that soon, or a presentation. Marxism isn't the whole of communism. That's very true. It's just one flavor of it, period. Marx got most of his shit from indigenous folk in North America. You speaking facts, Sean? But yes, so the next point I was going to make, getting right back into this very heavy topic, is how much people have specifically Native American people and Muslim people are policed. You can see that in pagan folks, which is like a wide variety, but you can see that. I'm literally pointing at my screen right now, like y'all can see me doing that in the graphic on the screen. What's up? How's it going? I do that shit too. I'll be on the phone talking with my hands, like anyone can see me, literally. Yeah, this whole time, every time I feel like y'all kind of see my shoulder move, it's because I'm pointing at the slides with my finger, and y'all literally cannot see me doing that. But that is what I am doing, as if y'all can see me doing that. Because, hey, what's up? Hey now, you're a rock star. Get your show on. Anyways. Yes, what's up? I'm happy to see y'all. Hello, friends. Okay. Back into serious mode. All right. Abolitionist imaginings. This is the last chapter. I have been so happy to go over this book with y'all. I'm getting like emotional. Our last slide. Abolitionist Imaginings, a conversation with Bo Brown, Raina Gossett, and Dylan Rodriguez. The reforming of police and prisons expands state power and does little to nothing to keep people safe or out of jail. And 6 ways the prison industrial complex carries out eugenicist practices and to do with reproductive justice is they isolate people from their partners, locking people up during the few years they can have children. They isolate you from your families, incarcerating trans people and then using their record, and then they use their record to keep them from having custody of their children. They force trans people to have surgeries that will sterilize them. Oh, I have so many typos. I'm so sorry. They force trans people to have surgeries that will sterilize them if they want to go to a gender-affirming prison. Because you are assigned by your genitalia. So if you would like to go to a prison that correlates with your genitalia, then you will have to have a surgery. That is a big decision, and not all trans people want to do that. They deny trans people their medical care, which often results in death. And they keep incarcerated people from having children together. And overall, the prison system kills trans people. There are a disproportionate amount of people that are murdered in prison, especially in ICE detention centers. And that is, okay, I was like, that's the end. I have a whole other slide. Yes, period. Save Silwan, 100%. And abolish oppressive systems all the time. Yes. Oh, did I miss some shit? Oh, no. For anyone wondering, thank you so much. We are going over Captive Genders by Eric A. Stanley. Yes. And if you missed this, of course, the VOD will be up. And then I do post like an edited version with captions on YouTube. So that will be a thing. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. But yeah, so what I took away from this book, prison abolition is an imperative part of Black and queer liberation, and LGBTQ history is an abolitionist one. Queer folks have always been fighting against the prison industrial complex. Neoliberal reformist policy expands prisons and puts people in more danger. Prisons are created to be dangerous and to enforce puritanical beliefs. Queer people of color endure compounding oppression and have limitless and revolutionary potential. And you must organize around improving people's material conditions and avoiding paternalism. Did someone say abolish oppressive systems? Fuck yeah. And that is Captive Genders in the Prison Industrial Complex. Thank you so much to all of you that took this ride from my first ever stream. And now we are done with this book. I'm so emo. Thank you for all the newbies. Oh, heck, paternalism. Yeah, let's fight it. All my homies hate paternalism, period. I'm so excited for y'all to be here. I'm so excited for these to get better. Thank you for being here through my typos, through my clunky language, for me trying to figure out how to explain things to other humans. This has been amazing. I finished my first book ever on stream. Woo! Wow, I'm so excited. I also have not had enough sleep and I'm a little loopy. But thank y'all so much for being here. I'm so emotional and so happy. Clap. Hi, it's Editing Chantilly here. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave a heart emoji in the comments if you made it to the end. If you wanna be a patron, that's an option. The links are all down below. I think that's all I got for you today. So I'll let my amazing patrons lead us on out of here. Hope y'all enjoy your day. Bye.
I've never done anything but a couple psychedelics. Could you tell it? I've got fears and no control. Can't you smell it? Overwhelming. I'm so afraid of being him that I've never made a fist. What a sticky situation. The wax, the wax, the wax, the wax is melting. I can't. It's overwhelming. I am. I am always in a rush. I am always giving up. I am always in a rush. I am always giving up. I'm never owning up to my
Here's the last slide. It is just pictures of Marsha P. Johnson because I wanted them there. Very exciting, fun stuff.